Welcome to episode 1. I'm your host, Ryan Phillips, and today I'm sitting down with my Spelman sister, Shaté Hayes. We are in Giles Hall, known for its appearance on A Different World.
Hello? Hello? All the girls afraid to fail, are you there? Welcome to the podcast where we talk to women over 40 to learn all there is to know about growing up and succeeding. From activists and entrepreneurs to leaders of national organizations, we're getting every ounce of the tea. Let's go.
Shaté Hayes is a sister, storyteller, performer, and producer. She has traveled across the world, written countless articles for Dance Magazine, and right now she is producing a new show in Atlanta called Rise. She has recently gone through a transition period, separating from her husband, but now she is on a new journey of self-love and discovery. We are going to talk about all the highs, lows, and in-betweens of Shaté's journey. Hopefully we can feel closer to her and ourselves. So let's start off with a pulse check.
Okay.
If you could describe your mindset on life right now in 3 words, what would you say?
Faith. Crazy. That's the best word.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe I'll replace crazy with out of control. That's 3 words.
Mm-hmm.
And hopeful.
Nice. So funny you said out of control, because I feel like for 20-year-olds who just graduate or wherever we're at 20, life feels out of control.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of helpful, I would say, to hear that it doesn't change.
No, I think if anything, what I've learned in this season is there is no control. I never went through life thinking I could control things. At least I didn't feel that way. But I am a planner. I am a go-getter. I have things and I check off my to-dos. But if life has not taught me anything, I intentionally created a life for myself, and then God blew it up and moved me somewhere else and uprooted me in ways that I had not planned for myself. And so it really has humbled me and shown me that I any perception of control I feel like I thought I had is not real.
That's real.
Yeah.
And can you talk about, you said God blew it up. So can you talk
Mm-hmm.
about what that looked like?
Yeah, so I feel like I was very intentional about creating a dance career, a life for myself out of college. So I did that. So I created this career that I was proud of and I loved, and I always wanted to come back to Atlanta, right? And so because work took me a lot of different places, I finally got the opportunity to come back here about 8 years ago. And I was super, super intentional, because before this period, I always had to just go where the work was. It was the first time in my life where I was like, I get to decide that I'm rooting my life here. This is what it's going to look like, and this is how I'm going to go about living it. And so I planted myself in these communities, church and sorority and friendships, and got married and chose where I was living. And it was just almost for the first time, I was like, okay, I'm a grown up, and this is what my life looks like. And this is sort of enough. And I will be honest that I said it's enough in a settling kind of way, because I still had specific dreams and desires, but I was kind of if they happen, they happen. I'm not going to be in some crazy pursuit like I was in my 20s. I'm just going to try to live a soft life. And then, I would say about a year and a half ago, God was just it just shook me awake. I didn't ask you to do any of that. You're settling. Do something different.
Yeah.
And I remember actually saying to God, out of my mouth, if you want to blow up my life, you're going to have to do it yourself. Famous last words, because let me tell you how he has proceeded to do that in every way, right? So this corporate career, I'm VP of programs at a nonprofit. It just felt too toxic. No longer wanted to do that. So now I'm all of a sudden an entrepreneur again. And then all of a sudden the bottom falls out of my marriage, and I'm going through divorce actively now. And all of the things I thought I was doing in my career that were enough were suddenly not enough anymore. And so now I'm going after all of these production ideas and stories I wanted to tell that I was comfortable not doing before. And it's just, this whole version of a life that, quite honestly, is probably better. I know it's better than the one that I was going to settle for, but that shaking up, the transition of it has not been fun or easy, or insert any other positive feeling, emotion there.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
So was it your dream to live this soft life, or was it your dream to tell all these stories, or was it both? Like,
oh, that's a good question. What was my dream? It was my dream, I think, for a season just to have some stability. I think, if I'm being honest, and this is my first time, I think, even processing this out loud, I sort of felt a judgment almost from people, because I was always having to move every couple of years, right? And so I really do admire people who are like, they've lived here since college and they've had the same kind of career, right? Like they went to college, they got the grad school degree, and they worked in the same field. And like, they've had this sense of stability, at least on the outside looking in, that I sort of judge myself for not having, because I chose an artistic career and I was a freelancer. And so I'm like going all these places and moving to a new city and haven't gotten married yet and haven't had kids yet. And I'm just out here, you know what I mean? Not really anchored to anywhere. And so I was like, it was my opportunity to try having that kind of a life.
Yeah.
And I think what I'm starting to get a sense of is like, maybe I wasn't called to have that kind of life. And that's kind of hard to sit with, if I'm being honest, because like, why can't I be normal, or why can't I be regular? And that's no diss to any version of anyone's life that they've actively chosen. But I kind of wanted to, I always wanted to tell the stories. I always knew I would go back to entrepreneurship, but I guess I thought it would be more on my own terms than it being like, nope, your time's up. You tried this, you've done this for a season, and now go do what I asked you to do, kind of thing, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And you've been a writer, you've written books, you've produced shows, you've worked for Tony Award-winning companies, and you've also done the corporate America route. So what would you tell your 20-year-old self who's trying to approach that career, whether it's corporate America? Like, what would you tell her about how to approach it all?
I think the only thing that's coming to mind for me is I would just tell her to like calm down. Like, it's fine. I was always in a rush to get somewhere. Like, it meant something if I hadn't arrived or something like that. And I could think about my dance career very specifically, having decided to move to LA, and I'm just starting out. I'm still just trying to figure out this thing, what it means to even have a professional dance career, because I didn't grow up with cable. I didn't see visions of backup dancers. The only thing I saw was Fly Girls on The Living Color, and still to this day I want to be a Fly Girl on The Living Color. Like, so I didn't know what that meant to have that kind of career, right? So I'm there, and like, I'm in the midst of all these incredible dancers who, like, quite honestly didn't have a lot of backup plans. I went to college, and a lot of them was like right out of high school, they made their dreams happen, and they're already like dancing for Beyonce, and they're already right. And so I was always comparing myself to them, like, oh, I'm not there, I'm a failure. And even though I'm doing all these other incredible jobs, I am, choreographing theater productions, and I'm teaching everywhere, and I'm like going overseas, I'm doing all these things, like, I haven't been Beyonce, so I'm a failure, right? And so it kept me in so much angst, and I think unhappiness, and almost like, I think a burnout or depression, or some version of the two, because I'm just like in a hamster wheel, like working overnight so I can be free for auditions during the day, and then I'm going to auditions, not sleeping, then I got to go to class because that's where you network, right? And I'm just doing all of these things. You got to have performances, and I was just worked myself up into such a tizzy. And I assigned so much meaning to failures and redirections, and assigned so much personal meaning to like my own spirit, that like, I don't think life requires all of that, quite honestly. I'm just now starting to understand that. Even I can say that in the midst of all of the turmoil that I've experienced in the past couple of years, I'm still even wise enough, sane enough, sober enough to say, like, life actually doesn't require all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you brought up this term failure.
Yeah.
And so what's kind of your relationship with failure? How do you process failure? Just talk to me about that a little bit.
I think I have a very interesting relationship with failure, because I'm able to teach it exceptionally well. So as an educator, I got a master's in dance, and I was teaching dance. Like, I feel like I've taught dance even before I was pursuing it as a career. Like, it's just something that I've always been able to do. And it was so much a part of my teaching philosophy, in fact. Like, I literally was teaching people how to take the fear out of failure through everything that I taught, to the point where when I was grading, I would not take as many points off if they were covered well, so that they would be able to bet on themselves and take more chances in their movement. And yeah, so I'm able to like really theorize it, understand what it takes to not be afraid of it, and yet I still experience the fear of failure myself. In fact, I'm in this corporate career. I have a really decent salary. I'm doing meaningful work, right? I'm like working for a nonprofit, doing programmings, which in a sense felt like producing in a way. Like, I'm producing learning experiences, I'm producing workshops, I'm producing content. I'm still approaching my corporate work from the lens of a producer, right? And so I was like, oh, this could work. This is fine. Still having this like inkling and this desire to be out on my own again. There was this one season I was literally buying nothing but producer books, Spike Lee, like all these old school film and TV producers, like just all these books. And then I was like, oh, what am I going to do with this? Because certainly I'm not going to be a PA and start over and work for $100 a day and for 20 hours a day. I'm not doing that. So what are we doing here? Right. I think I kind of talked myself out of it, and I was too scared. Like, I'm not giving up, coming from a professional dance career, which I was sustaining a living, a good, decent living, to this, cushy corporate life with equity and paid time off and, the golden cuffs that everyone speaks of. And there was a moment where, there was a lot of disruption in the organization that I was in. They were doing layoffs, and I had an opportunity, I think, to go back into entrepreneurship for myself. And I just didn't, because I was too scared to. So I literally the conditions had to be uncomfortable enough for me to just take the leap. So.
Mm-hmm. And is that what kind of inspired you to be where you are now? Like, it was God like shaking everything up? Like, it was kind of by force and not.
Mm-hmm. Inspired is a really interesting word. Yeah, I would say it was not a choice. It definitely felt like by choice. I'm kind of the person that it is harder for me to be somewhere and be uncomfortable than it is to face a transition. Mm-hmm. So I would rather face the unknown than to be somewhere where my spirit just feels off. So I took this nonprofit role after I was afraid to take the entrepreneurship opportunity, and it was just, there was no peace there. There was it was just no peace there. And so, I took that for about 7-8 months, and I was like, okay, clearly, you know what I mean? And the idea of even looking for another role literally made me like want to throw up. So I was like, okay, this is a sign that I need to like trust whatever God is doing and just go out on my own. So yes, it was kind of by force, like the conditions were just such that I wasn't comfortable where I was.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And so this question comes to mind of, do you plan out your whole life, or do you just kind of succumb to like what comes with it and the journey and the path that comes along?
It's interesting because I never felt like I planned my life at all. That's kind of like almost a pseudo regret that I kind of have. I feel like, especially coming from like our college experience, where I feel like so many people came to college and just had a very clear picture of what they wanted their lives to be. And then they were strategic about it. So not even planning, they were strategic in whether that was to get a husband when they came here, whether that was to have a specific degree, a specific career, and they like planned out the steps to get there, and they made that thing happen. I didn't have any kind of a strategy. I was just out here just living life. And like sometimes I kind of regret that. Sometimes I kind of feel foolish about that. I was just out here following joy. And I don't know if that's like, it could be a recipe for success. I mean, I've gotten to where I am, and I've done some incredible things, but I don't know. I guess it depends on whose standards I'm judging it by. But no, I haven't in the past had any strategy. I try to be more strategic now. But even then, like, you can have all the strategy and planning, and life is going to do what it's going to do. So
true. So you brought up this idea of standards.
Mm-hmm.
So what standards do you look at? Like,
who knows, right? Like, there are societal standards and norms, which I think I have unfortunately allowed myself to sort of judge myself according to. I like to, in higher minded moments, think like, oh, the only standards that matter are God's. And like, I even put on my little post-it on my computer, like, these are my terms of success, and I'm doing good work, and it's, I'm living the life that I want to live, and I'm giving, I'm sowing. It wasn't excess. It was like good and meaningful and fruitful, but and abundant in a lot of ways. And I was like, that's what success means. And then I can see myself sometimes being like, well, actually, like I think I want it to be a little bit more, and I don't know where that comes from, and I don't know if we even need to call it good or bad. It might just be, it is what it is, maybe,
Yeah, that makes complete sense. I think it's so easy for us to compare ourselves to others or try to feel like, oh, that's the journey I need to be on.
Yeah.
But then when you think about it, like, I feel like as 20-year-olds, every time we go to a cookout or a social event, the question of, oh, are you going to have kids? Where's the husband? Like, were you ever stressed about a biological clock or a societal clock or anything like that?
Maybe a little bit. I was not ever the little girl who just dreamt of being married, right? Like I didn't dream of weddings, but I have always wanted to be partnered, don't get me wrong. And so it wasn't until I got into my 30s where I started to be like, okay, I'm ready to get married. It did sting when some of those comments came across. I remember this one older person, and I think maybe I just internalized her comment more than I needed to. This older woman from church, when I was kind of telling her where I had just come from, and I think maybe I had just moved from LA, and I was talking about maybe going somewhere else, and she was kind of like, well, you ain't gonna have to find no man moving around like that. Should I be concerned about that? Mm-hmm. Do I need to sit down somewhere so a man can find me, kind of a thing? And so that kind of stuff bothered me. Now that I'm in my 40s, I'm way more mindful of it. And I did how old was I? Maybe right at turning 40, did freeze my eggs. And even in the process of that, because I had a really trying fertility journey during my marriage, even during the process of that, all of the signs and signals in the doctor's offices, right? Like geriatric, and you know what I mean? Like they just kept saying that, and like, we got this number of eggs and that's good for your age, right? Like that stuff's annoying. And I don't understand if they know. I don't think they know or understand what it does to your spirit and your being to experience all of that. So I would say I'm much more mindful of it now, but I'm also still trusting of God, and like to the point that I don't have control over anything. So literally anything can still happen. I mean, Janet, come on. Everybody's using her as a marker. Like where we used to be talking about Abraham and Sarah, everybody's like, Janet had a baby at 52, and so you can too. So, I guess anything can happen.
So true. And I think kind of you saying that like you planned out, or you didn't plan it out, but you ended up in this marriage and everything was stable, and then all of a sudden it was blown up. I think that's a testament to it not like you not having any control.
None whatsoever.
So can you talk a little bit about like how you're processing the end of that relationship and like kind of how you're dealing with it?
How am I processing it? So much processing. I can tell you how I'm healing. I am actively, like, thank God for therapists. Like, I love her. And I think, quite honestly, the way that she helped me to grow and find my voice and advocate for myself was probably a lot of the problem that caused to the demise of my marriage, unfortunately. Like, the more that I had a voice for myself, the more friction it caused in my relationship, which is not great. And I think it's something everybody needs to be talking about. But therapy, God, I have spiritual practice, I'm journaling, I am prayerful, I'm working out, I am creative practices, I'm dancing, I am like listening to music. I'm not suppressing my emotions. I'm crying. Anytime I feel like I need to cry, I just let it out. And that's hard for me because I hate crying. Like, I just want to be happy. I just want to feel good. And so feeling all of the emotions I've had over the past like year or two and facing them has been one of the hardest and most uncomfortable things I have ever done.
Sometimes I feel like people can see the end of a relationship as a failure or anything like that. Did that ever come across your mind? Or
1000%. And I think that's why I stayed so long. It's like, I didn't get married to get divorced. Not ever once crossed my mind that I would end up divorced. Not ever crossed my mind, because I felt like I went into the marriage with so much intention, with so much, like, I was mindful of everything that my mom taught me about relationships and marriage, and I was putting God in it, and I prayed, I was fasting. You literally could not have paid me to believe I would end up divorced. So yeah, that felt like a failure. Then you're in the church and they're like, divorce is not an option. Don't let the enemy take your marriage, right? It's like, well, damn, like, do you stay here and take all of this narcissistic abuse for the sake of staying married and being married? At a certain point, I was like, does God care more about the institution of marriage or about my spirit? If I'm losing myself, I'm literally losing who I am. I have become a shell of myself in this relationship. Is it more important to God that I stay here and suffer through this, or should I set myself free? And quite honestly, I felt more nudging and more peace about setting myself free than staying and enduring any type of emotional abuse because I didn't want to be divorced. So yeah, like, oh snap, I'm gonna be divorced, I'm a failure, I don't have no kids, I'm starting over at freaking 43. Like, who wants to do that? Ew. Like, anybody got time for that, right? Like, I didn't want any of that. Let the record show, I didn't want any of that. But yet here we are. So it is what it is.
Yeah, and so a lot of us are navigating those like romantic relationships, and we're young and everything seems fun and woohoo. Like, how would you tell a younger, like 20-year-old person, like how do you navigate those romantic relationships? Like,
that's a really hard question because so much of it depends on who you are at the moment, and we change, right? So even if I had gotten married in my 20s, I think it would have been disastrous. Because eventually I would have gotten to this place also. And so I guess what I'm learning now that feels most important, this is hindsight, and also lived experience. Honesty is important. Like, genuinely, is the person who they say that they are, is it a representative? Are they mirroring you? Like, oh, you say you like something, they like it too, right? Like, how real are they? And then also, is it a relationship that will grow with you? Like, can you grow together? Because you are not going to be the same person you are a couple years down the line. They won't either. And like, can you continue to learn yourselves, learn one another, and like, will your values, your shared values, stay the same so that you can make it? And so I have learned, like, that's way more important to me. Like, do we have the same spiritual values? Do we have the same life values? Do we aspire to live the same? That idea of equally yoked, proven to be so very true, right? Like, in terms of your mindset, the level of your thinking, how you talk about yourself, what you aspire to in life, that part of it, if you don't get anything else out of what I say, you got to have somebody that matches your mindset, period. Like, that, I think, regardless of what conflict that comes, no matter how you change, how matter they change, if you are equally yoked on that level and you have an earnest desire to stay committed, I think, it's possible. And it's easy, I'm sure, for someone to be like, why would I listen to someone who's going through a divorce? I'm like, I'm telling you what I've learned the hard way.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
yeah.
Listen, don't do it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so 20-year-old Shaté is sitting here right in front of you, and you can tell her anything in the world. What would it be?
I love you. I love you, girl. I'm so proud of you and the way you showed up with the information that you had and who you were at the time. And you did the very, very best that you could. And I am so, so proud of you. And anything that you feel like, any voice you didn't have or suppressed or people pleased, or in whatever way you feel like you could not stand up for yourself or fight for yourself, I'm doing that for you now.
I love that. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you for having me. This was a beautiful conversation. I'm so proud of you.
Yeah. Thank you.